Welcome back to Podcast Recovery, everyone. We are your hosts, David O.
And Eric V.
Today we are joined by our special guest, John. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Good, man. Where are you from, John?
I'm from Phoenix, Arizona.
Oh, cool.
Cool,
All right.
man.
You're a ways away. We're here in Baltimore getting severe thunderstorms and tornadoes, so yeah.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Third tornado this week.
Yeah, third tornado this week. It's been pretty crazy.
That is crazy.
Yeah. When were you first introduced to recovery?
When was I first introduced to recovery? Like this time around, or?
Anytime, just at all in your life.
Okay, I would say the first time I was introduced to recovery was in 2014 in March. And it was kind of like my first time around trying to get sober, but it didn't stick until this time around. And so my recovery date, I say, is May 7th, 2018.
Oh, nice. Well, congratulations. That was going to be my next question is, how long have you been sober?
Now I can say I'm over a year sober, which is awesome to say.
Yeah, man.
Hell yeah, man.
Absolutely. Congratulations on your year of sobriety. And with all that out of the way, we're going to turn it over to you to share your story with us. So take it away.
Awesome. So let's see. I grew up in a good family. It was a rough childhood, though, with my family, because it was we grew up Christian, but at the same time we grew up Hispanic, so we had a mix of weird cultures. And I also grew up Catholic on top of Christian, so I didn't know what I believed in and why I believed what I believed. And then I got some teachings from my family that didn't really coincide with like my religion, because Hispanic beliefs and like Christian beliefs kind of don't mix all the time, like with the culture. And then I grew up with two sisters, and one older, one younger. So I was the middle child, and I was like the black sheep of the family. So I just kind of did my own thing. I didn't really fit in with my family, and that caused problems later on. And so I would say that I just, how do I want to word this? I always felt lonely, and I always try to find a way to escape that loneliness. And even in school, I was like a straight A student, and so I didn't have many friends because I didn't fit the Hispanic culture or the culture of like my social class. And so I was just doing whatever I could to try to fit in. So in high school is when I actually started using. I was on the baseball team at school, which was like the only thing I was good at. Besides being a straight A student, the only thing that made me semi-normal was playing baseball. And so one summer between freshman year and sophomore year, I was introduced to what they call the gateway drug, marijuana. And that's when I started using. We were at the park. We kind of jumped the fence to a school park. And I joined out of peer pressure. But at the same time, I wanted to do it myself. I was interested, but I knew everyone else was doing it. So you understand. It was one of those, it was one of those things where I wanted to do it, but at the same time I didn't want to do it, but I was curious about it. So I was like, why not? But I grew up a goody-goody. So this was very out of my shell. But I wanted to be like everyone else, and I didn't want to feel alone. And then as soon as I got that high, it was something that I loved. And I tried to chase that for years after. I did different things. Smoked what I could, took what I could, snorted what I could, for the rest of until I got sober. So I would say it progressively got worse until senior year, when I got hooked on pills. I had surgery on my deviated septum, and that was when I was introduced to like painkillers and different kinds of just pills. And it just right away, unfortunately, I fell in love. It was like love at first sight.
Yeah.
And I have an addictive personality, which isn't the best thing.
No, especially not for pills.
No, especially not for pills. And so my mom was on some of the same, but stronger for her back. She's disabled. So I ended up running out of my pills, and I stole her pills one day, and I remember I stole a lot, and I ended up getting scared and waking her up and letting her know what had happened. She didn't know I was on anything at this point, really. She didn't know I was doing drugs or even smoking weed. So I woke her up, and she was scared. She was frightened. She didn't know what to do. She, like, pumped me with bread. I remember that. She's like, eat bread. Keep eating bread. Don't fall asleep. Eat more bread.
What?
Absorb the pills.
Is that a thing?
And we just stayed up.
That was like drinking.
Yeah.
I don't know, but that's what we did.
Okay. All right.
I don't know if it's true, but I'm alive today.
Yeah. It worked, yeah.
Yeah, I took way more than I could. Yeah. So I kind of stopped for a little bit on that. It scared me, but I guess not enough to stay sober because within weeks I hadn't drank up to this point, and I thought I was a good boy because I didn't drink alcohol. So I could do all the drugs in the world, but I'm still a good boy because I didn't drink. And I know alcoholism is something that ran in my family, but I never thought it was like a real monster, I guess. I didn't understand it for the allergy that it is.
Yeah.
So I was fine. I was like, no, I can drink. And so my family and I got into a huge fight, which wasn't rare. But this one, it got to the point where I'm just like, I'm packing my stuff, I'm leaving. So I didn't necessarily get kicked out, but I didn't feel welcomed home. So I started sleeping at the apartment of this couple that I had met as a camp counselor that summer. And they introduced me to Fireball.
To what?
So I was 18 to Fireball.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah. And I was 18. I was about to start college in a couple of weeks. And I remember my first drink was with my friend, former friend. He got us some shot glasses, and we just did some shots. And within a couple, he was like, okay, I'm good. I'm going to bed. And I'm like, I like this. Can I keep going?
Yeah.
And he was like, sure. And right away, again, I fell in love, which is not a good thing. I love the effect it had. I loved how it made me feel not depressed and not lonely, but instead it made me feel confident. And it was fun at the time. I can't lie about that. Like, the effects right away, I loved.
Yeah.
So I continued that night, and I ended up polishing off his brand new bottle of Fireball. The next morning, he was surprised, and I was like, is that not normal? And he's like, no, that's not, but that's okay. It was your first time drinking, no big deal.
Yeah.
And then I ended up going to a binge drink season for the next couple of weeks, where I woke up, I drank, I fell back to sleep. I woke up, I drank, I fell back to sleep. And I didn't even, it's not like I slept at night. It was like I slept when I could.
Yeah.
And most of the time was drinking, whatever I could get my hands on. So I started stealing stuff from my parents' home. I started stealing stuff from them. I spent my high school graduation money on buying alcohol, somehow getting a hold of it. So I would pay other people to buy it for me, obviously, because I'm 18. I ended up spending so much. And then on top of that, like, it stopped becoming fun. And I was just my depression was exacerbating because of it. So I didn't know what I was doing. I was spiraling. And then I remember one night I was texting a friend that I was by the canal and I was suicidal and I wanted to jump in. He ended up calling the police on me. And stupid drunk me is like texting him where I'm at and freaking him out. But then, like, the cops are walking up to me. And I'm like freaking out, so I'm texting him more,
Yeah.
only knowing that he's relaying the message to the cops, which at the time I was pissed off, but now looking back, I'm so thankful. They came, they're like, "Hey, are you John?" And I'm like, "Depends." They're like, "Have you been drinking?" I'm like, no, I'm not drinking. They were like, "Can we search your backpack?" I'm like, "Sure." Pull out container of vodka that was full, it's now empty, and a bunch of cans of that margarita mix. They're like, "Oh, really? What's this?" And I'm like, "Those are my water bottles." Yeah, I lied straight to a police officer, and it wasn't even a good lie.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what else. I don't know. But my friend was there with them, and the policeman actually sent me home and didn't have any legal ramifications. He said, "Go home with your friend." And I'm like, okay. Yeah, I jumped on that because I was shaking. I thought I was going to jail for underage drinking or something. We were going to be locked up for suicidal thoughts.
Yeah.
Something. He was just like, "Go home with your friend." And I'm like, okay. So I went home with my friend, and we went to a friend's apartment. And when I was there, I had a bunch of people there in a circle on the couches and everything waiting for me.
Yeah.
It was, they're like, it was an intervention.
Yep.
They're like, "Hey, you just started drinking like a month ago and you've gone wild like right away. There's something that's up and we need to get help." I'm like, "Nope, I start college in 2 weeks. I can't afford to go. I move into campus in 2 weeks."
Yeah.
And they're like, "No." So I was like, "No, I'm good." And I told them it'd be fine. And so I just slept it off that night, and I ended up not going into any facility, which right now, not right now, but I regret not going at that time because it would have saved a lot of pain and a lot of heartache.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys know what I mean.
Oh, yeah.
Taking that full steps ahead of time would have definitely saved me a lot. So I'm going to college. It's my freshman year. For the first semester, I'm going to class intoxicated or high, every class if I go. And somehow I managed to get a 4.0 in their honors college. But I use the excuse, I can't study without being high or intoxicated because I have ADHD. So I'm like, it helps me focus. It helps me study. Which I'm not going to lie, it kind of did when I was high.
Was it? What was it? Were you taking like Adderall or what?
I was snorting some pills, like Adderall, and I was smoking weed or getting drunk, and somehow any of that with my brain chemistry helped me focus. It calms me down, helped me focus. But once I was done, I would go into that depression again. So there's that underlying like condition that I wasn't dealing with.
Yep.
And then I remember one night I took so many pills again, and I started freaking out because I changed my mind of what I wanted to do. At first, I wanted to die. And then after I took the pills, I'm like, oh, crap. And I was drunk. And then I realized that I got to the top of one of the buildings at on campus, and I was going to jump, but then I changed my mind again, and I started texting people. And so the campus security arrested me. They're like, "Are you drunk?" And I'm like, "No." So I convinced them that I wasn't, and I was able to act sober when I needed to. And then they did a mental eval, and they cleared me to go. But basically, I was just a hot mess throughout college freshman year. I remember I led like a young adults retreat to Prescott here in Arizona, which is like a forest area, really nice weather. Phoenix is really hot, so it's a contrast. Prescott's really cool, windy. So we went up there, and I remember me and a close friend of mine who was a pastor's kid who was struggling with the same things I was. We ended up getting 2 bottles of Jack Daniels and taking some of his random pills that he had. They were antipsychotics. I was like, "Here, try this. This is fun." I'm like, "Okay." Yeah, I wasn't the smartest. I still don't. It's a lifetime away now, it feels like. But we drove up to the top of a mountain while everyone else was down at the cabin, and we just drank and talked about life because I was so closed off that my closest friends didn't know how I was feeling or anything about me. So he got some pills into me, got some alcohol into me. We started talking, and he realized like how much I actually need help.
Yeah.
I remember blacking out, and I remember just like audio of it. I made phone calls and stuff telling the people at the cabin that were stuck. I even professed my love to a girl that I thought I was in love with at the time in their voicemail, which didn't turn out very well. No. And so I remember us getting stuck. I remember vaguely getting out of the car and trying to push, and I just kept falling because we got stuck on the side of the mountain, and I'm trying to push his vehicle, and I keep slipping because I'm drunk. The next thing I remember, one of the friends we're back at the cabin, and one of my friends at the cabin is like having to shower me off because the friend I was with threw up all over me. And then I remember being in the cabin, and somehow I'm in bed, and my friends kept checking on me because apparently I kept ceasing to breathe. So they kept coming in and like having to wake me up, and it was a big thing. I didn't find out till the next day. I woke up at 6 a.m. and I'm feeling great. I'm ready for the hike that we had planned. Everyone's pissed off at me, and I don't know why. So that was my first time getting sober after that night, March 24th, I believe, of 2014. And it lasted for 2 years, but I did it myself. I didn't use any program. And then when I was coming up towards graduation of college, I relapsed, and I was still depressed, and it was an issue that I didn't take care of. So I'm about to graduate. I'm graduating with 2 degrees, top of my class, 3.9 GPA, and life was good, but I had nothing set up after college, and it stressed me out, and it depressed me. And on top of that, I was dealing with some trauma that I'd never dealt with before. So I started drinking again. It started slowly. I didn't recognize myself as an alcoholic. I was just scared of drinking and using, so that's why I've been sober. I didn't recognize myself as an addict or an alcoholic at that point. So I graduated. Great. I was the most lonely and depressed I've ever been. I moved in with a pastor who was like a dad to me, and we just fought all the time. And I remember another pastor friend I invited to my house for 4th of July, and I was drinking at that time, and I just kept gulping down drinks like a fish. And he was sober, and he was in the program. And then the next day, we had like an intervention at Denny's where he is yelling at me across the table in this public place that I have a drinking problem. He knows what he's talking about because he's in recovery.
That's not like, appropriate for Denny's.
Right?
That's
not a Denny's.
No, that's messed up. At least like
maybe an IHOP.
Yeah, maybe an IHOP, but not a Denny's.
Yeah. I know. So at that time, I didn't realize that he's trying to do my one step for me, and I'm just not having it. I'm just not having it. I'm like, no, I don't have a drinking problem, whatever. And so I just cut off ties with him, and I'm living with this pastor. We're arguing all the time. And then my depression is just getting worse and worse. And so I checked myself into a mental hospital in August. And I was maybe 2 days sober, like I hadn't drank, but I didn't accept I have a problem. So I checked myself into a mental hospital for a suicide attempt, and there they like gave me all these tests. And it was the most humiliating yet helpful time of my life, and I'm so thankful that I did it, no matter what the outcome was. But while I was in there, they were like, "You have a problem with alcohol," and I'm like, "Maybe if a professional's telling me, then this may be the case." And so even then, I didn't fully understand what that meant. I had gone to a meeting before, and I didn't like it. And I'm like, no. So why
didn't you like that first meeting?
It felt like people were just complaining about their life, and the advice I had got was oh, just don't drink or use between meetings. I'm like, okay, so your new addiction becomes a meeting. And I didn't understand at the time what they were actually talking about. So that's why.
Okay.
Good question. But I didn't like that meeting because it just felt like people complaining at that specific one. So I never went back to that specific one. But I go to different ones, and I find so much experience, strength, and hope there. So I think it was just like a one-off case.
Yeah, it happens.
But yeah, exactly. So while I was in the mental hospital, the pastor that I was living with actually kicked me out. He was like, we don't feel equipped to handle you. And so I moved back in with my parents, and then that's when we developed a relationship. I started going to recovery meetings with friends, and I actually enjoyed it. And then I started doing the step work with my sponsor and going through what it looks like to be an alcoholic and have this allergy. And like, I identify with all of that. And so I did my step work, and I'm actually running through it again now because I felt like I didn't get the most out of it the first time because I was still reluctant to accept the fact that I have this allergy.
Yeah.
And I know I need to experience that to my innermost self. And so I would say the second time I'm doing my step work for the past couple months, I've really, like, that mental obsession has finally left me, which I didn't think was ever going to happen. Like, I was almost a year sober. I did my steps. I had a sponsee, but I still have this mental obsession. And I'm like, why? Why do I always want to drink or use? I don't understand. A good day, I want to celebrate. I want to drink. Bad day, I want to forget about it. I want to drink. And so we're running through my steps again, and it's my step one. And I'm like, you know what? There was always part of me that was like, what if I'm not really an alcoholic and I'm wasting my time? And I could be drinking. And then I realized that's exactly the thoughts an alcoholic would have. A normal person does not ask those questions. And so I'm here today experiencing a year sober, experiencing, I turned 24, so I'm young, in the same month. So I celebrated my birthday and my belly button birthday the same month, and I got engaged, and I'm able to do that because I'm sober today.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, so it's been a crazy month, the month of May. But I couldn't be happier. It's taken a lot of work, taken a lot of therapy, taken medication, but I've put in the footwork, and I've realized, like, I deserve to be happy and I deserve to be sober. And so working through my own issues and my own trauma that happened in my life that caused these issues, I'm able to experience that joy and that freedom instead of succumbing to this cunning and baffling and powerful disease. So, yeah, that's all I have with that, and I'll pass.
All right. Fantastic.
That's great.
Great job. All right. We definitely have some questions for you.
Awesome.
I'm going to start, Eric.
As always.
That's not always.
Go ahead.
I yield to you enough.
Go ahead, it's fine.
Okay. So, you said you were at one point you were really hesitant to identify as either like an addict or an alcoholic. Describe that hesitation and like what was the hesitation about, and how did you get over that?
Okay. So I think there's a lot of factors that go into that. I think that hesitation came from, I feel like I always felt like I needed to be the perfect person in general, and the perfect person can't have a problem.
Ooh.
Perfect person can't be anything that deviates from like that ideal person. So I was like, no, I can't, because I just can't. It can't be me. I can't have a problem. And so that hesitation partly came from that. It partly came from the fact where I just thought in the back of my head that I just couldn't. I couldn't be an alcoholic, or I couldn't be an addict. Like, I know it runs in my family, but it can't be me. Or I thought maybe I didn't drink enough, or like do enough crazy stuff, because I heard people's stories. And I'm like, I didn't experience that much damage, but I kept trying to compare myself to others. And that's where that hesitation came in too. It's like, no, I have my own things that other people can relate with. They are still like crazy and wild, and things that other people will be able to relate with.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot of it just came from that comparison game of trying to be the perfect person and not being in the same place as other people. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I actually have a follow-up to that. So actually finally like getting past that hesitation and getting to that level of humility where you can surrender. Describe that to me, and how empowering was it to finally like really admit to yourself that like I do have a problem?
Are you talking about when I got sober, or this last time that I went to the first step?
Both.
Okay. So I think when I finally admitted I had a problem was when I was told that, and I went to a concert and I took a drink and I realized I want more.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, there's a problem here.
Mm-hmm.
I shouldn't want alcohol as much as I want it right now.
Mm-hmm.
I only had a shot, and this is all I'm thinking about.
Yeah.
I got to a meeting. I started, my friend found me a sponsor because I'm very introverted. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, I don't even want to be here. He's like, we're getting you a sponsor. So he found me a sponsor. We did the step work. We ended up not working out very well because I relapsed. Mm-hmm. And it's nothing that he did wrong. It's just he couldn't do the steps in a way that related to my mental health.
Yeah.
So he didn't pass me off, but for lack of better terms, he passed me off to his friend who has experience with mental health.
Okay.
And so he became my sponsor. We went through the steps, and I'm like, yeah, I have a problem, but I don't feel it as empowering. Like you're asking him the question at the time. It wasn't empowering to me. It was very saddening for me. But now that I'm going through the steps again, and I'm at that first step, when I'm like, I am an alcoholic, that was very empowering because I was able to admit it to my innermost self. I'm like, you know what? I am an alcoholic. I have that allergy. Now that I know what I have, I'm able to fight it. And so it gave me that empowerment to fight it every day, because it's an everyday struggle for alcoholics and addicts.
Yeah.
To be able to fight the good fight, to wake up, to say that third-step prayer, to say that seventh-step prayer, to be able to experience joy and freedom from our addictions and alcoholism. It comes from that place of empowerment of like, hey, I have something that's part of me, but it isn't me.
Mm-hmm. All right. Beautiful. That was a great
answer.
answer.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Eric.
Good. Okay.
What have you got?
So you kind of just touched on this a little bit as far as working steps and like how the steps also are working not only on your alcoholism or addiction, but also on your mental health. And so what are you doing today to help treat your mental health disorders?
Good question. So let me give some backstory. Sophomore year, when I was sober the first time, I found out that I could get accommodations for ADHD. I'd never been diagnosed before. Mm-hmm. And so I went in to get diagnosed so I could get paperwork, so I could get accommodations on school. Yeah. Not that I really needed it at the time, but later on it ended up being very beneficial for my depression. Mm-hmm. When I was there, I got diagnosed with ADHD, like extreme ADHD. So not just like regular, hey, I can't pay attention. Yeah. But like, it was bad. I got diagnosed with unspecified anxiety disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, persistent depressive disorder. Later on, I experienced an eating disorder, bulimia, where I would work out every day, barely eat. I went from over 200 pounds to 120 in a few months. And then when I got out of the mental hospital, I was diagnosed with ultra rapid cycling bipolar, which is not common. And so taking all these medications before that wasn't helping because I really had bipolar. So I was taking a bunch of different antidepressants and none of it worked because I needed a mood stabilizer. But it was hard to figure out that I had bipolar because the type that I had because I had comorbid depression and ADHD, some of the symptoms in both of those are found in this type of bipolar. So that's why it took so long to diagnose.
Yeah.
So what I'm doing today is I'm working my steps, I'm doing my program, I see a therapist, I'm on medication that works. And it took a while to get there because it is a guessing game, unfortunately, with medication. So I went through a lot of different ADHD medications. I went through a lot of antidepressants. Luckily, I only went through one bipolar medication, but I meditate and pray every day. I do self-care. I make sure there's balance in my life. I make sure that my mental health comes first, because if I'm not in a good place, I'm no use to anyone.
Absolutely. Yep. All right.
Good. And real quick, since you touched on eating disorders, I guess you don't hear about it as much with men as you do with women.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I had some struggles with eating disorders in the past, and I think, for me at least, the root for me personally, the root of that is a lot to do with control, but then also a lot to do with self-image and how I see myself, and no matter what I see in the mirror isn't what actually is reflecting back. So I guess, how is your relationship with food today? And also, how do you work on seeing yourself in a positive light rather than, the way that you saw yourself when you're acting out on an eating disorder?
Yeah, good questions. So like you said, a lot of the times, for anything, for eating disorders, it's usually a control thing of trying to control something. So mine was, I was controlling calories. I was controlling that number on the scale. And that was something in my chaotic life that I could control. And then body dysmorphia is more the image of where you see something that's different than what is actually there. And I have that as well. So trying to digest the question. For me, getting that image, that distorted image rectified is something that I'm still doing today. And I've gained weight since I've been sober, and it's been taking a toll on me. And there's still days where very few and far between, where I succumb to like the desires to make myself purge. But it's usually when it's a control thing, when my life feels chaotic. With the body dysmorphia, I have a beautiful, wonderful fiance who fights all my negative self-talk, and I'm able to talk openly and honest with her, and she reminds me that God loves me for who I am, and she loves me for who I am. And I don't need to have like a six-pack. I don't need to be skinny. I don't need to be muscular. That doesn't define who I am. It doesn't define my personality. It doesn't define what I've accomplished and what I will accomplish. And so it's having that positive self-talk from her, and then from my friends that really support me and understand what I've been through, and are able to see it not as me like crying for attention, because it can come off that way at times. Where it's like, oh, I'm fat. It's like, no, I really feel like fat and useless, and I'm ashamed of it. So it's them understanding and just not feeding into that, but fighting against it.
Wow, that's a great answer. All right, I want to dial it back a little bit and have a fun question real quick. So you said you were a baseball player. I have a few questions. A few questions there. What team is or was your team? Who was your favorite baseball player, and what position did you like playing the most?
Awesome. So with my ADHD, I actually hate watching sports, but I love playing it. But as a kid from Arizona, I loved the Diamondbacks, and my favorite player, Luis Gonzalez.
Okay. Yeah.
And and he Gonzo. Yeah, he was like an icon.
Yeah.
Or Randy Johnson. Of course. They're both icons for the team. But my favorite position to play is I love playing outfield. I played outfield for 3 out of my 4 years. So freshman year, I was on the freshman team. Sophomore year, I was on JV. I switched high schools, and I wasn't allowed to play my third year, but I still practiced with the team on the outfield. Some rule for preventing recruiting, I wasn't allowed to play for a year. And in my senior year, they started me off at second and short. And I'd never played before in my life. I had no idea what I was doing, but I was good at it. But my favorite position to play is definitely outfield because I don't have to pay attention the whole time. Yeah. I hear a ball hit, my attention span like zones in on where the ball is. I run to it. I feel that that impact of the ball in my glove, and I throw it like it's the best thing ever.
All right, awesome. Yeah, we got to have fun questions too. I got a real question.
Yeah, I love some questions.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, go ahead. You're such a jerk, Eric. Okay, so how describe how dealing with addiction in your relationship has been, and like how rough was it for you to deal with? How, like, what kind of toll did it take on your relationship with your fiance, and how has now recovery benefited that?
Awesome. So when I was with her, I was in the program, and I also relapsed. So she and I have been together for over a year, and I relapsed in May of last year, 2018, sorry, which is not my sober date. But she knew kind of what she was getting into because I explained it to her because I'm a very transparent guy. I don't think she understood. Yeah. So knowing and understanding two different things.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So when I called her and let her know that I relapsed, I was expecting her to break up with me. The opposite happened. I was given such grace, such mercy, such love that I've never experienced in my life before. And I knew that this was a long-term thing, if not forever. She was like, I love you. I don't understand what you're going through, and I'm not going to try to pretend that I do. But I'm going to love you for who you are, and I'm going to work through you with this. I'm not leaving your side. I'm not ashamed of you, and you shouldn't be ashamed of this. This was an action. It wasn't a good action, but it doesn't define who you are, because you are so much more. The impact that you make in people's lives, the impact that you will make on people's lives. And she just encouraged me, and she stuck by my side. And now we're engaged.
Cool.
Awesome. Definitely sounds like a keeper, man.
Right? I'm so blessed.
Yeah. All right, Eric, what you got?
So, you talked a few times about how suicide, it kind of was a repeating part of your story. And, being someone who is definitely thought about and tried suicide. Yep. It's not something that necessarily, and correct me if I'm wrong, everyone's different, but at least for me, it is like an option that is thought about on occasion. And it's, especially with depression, like these thoughts can come up, like where the easiest way out, is that. So I don't know if this happens for you, but if a suicidal thought does arise, how do you combat that now after being in recovery?
That's a great freaking question.
Good question. So, like you said, there's a difference between suicidal thoughts and being suicidal. Yeah. Suicidal thoughts happen. Anyone can have them. You cannot be depressed. It's just, hey, this is a thought. And the best way in that scenario is it's what's called acceptance and commitment therapy act, where you accept the thought, hey, I'm feeling, and then you commit to changing it. It's like a new novel form of counseling that not many people have heard of or use, but this is what I use, especially in my depression. I use I'm a counseling major right now. I'm getting 2 master's degrees, one in divinity and one in addiction counseling. And this one's not even taught in my degree program because it's so new.
Nice.
But it's something that I use and my therapist has used with me, where we identify the thoughts. We recognize it. We recognize whether it's our thought or the depression talking. And we call it out for what it is. So if it's a depressing thought that's not a normal thought, that's my depression talking, and I have to recognize that. And I picture it as like a little man on my shoulder, like the angel and the devil, with the angel being my normal thoughts and the devil being those distorted cognitions. And so I have to recognize that thought for what it is. Hey, that's not a good thought. That's not a normal thought. That's not a healthy thought. And so when it comes to suicidal thoughts, like, it's so easy to think that we're doing what's best for everyone when we're suicidal. We think no one wants us around. We're just a burden. So it's not being selfish like people think, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It's being selfless. We think we're a burden to everyone. And we think people are better off without us. Or at least that's my case and my experience with it.
Yeah.
So, like, it always irritates me when people are like, oh, they were so selfish. No, they thought they were being selfless.
Yeah.
But it's hard to see the different perspectives when you're depressed. It's hard to see the people that you would actually be hurting when you're depressed and suicidal. So the way I combat that is I recognize it for what it is, I identify it, and then I dispute it with rational thoughts and factual thoughts. I think about how it would affect my fiance. I keep wanting to say girlfriend. My fiance.
I have that trouble too. I'm engaged too, and I still call her my girlfriend. It's weird.
Well, congrats on that. But yeah, that's awesome. Congrats.
Thank you.
But yeah, I recognize it for what it is, and I try to change it.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's awesome. All right. You said you had 2 years of sobriety, not necessarily recovery, where you did it on your own. Tell me about those 2 years and what's different from, like, just being by yourself, staying sober, versus being in a actual, like, recovery program, and, like, what kept you sober those couple years?
I wouldn't even say I was sober. I would say I'm dry. So with sobriety comes a whole mindset change. But I was the same irritable, discontent person those 2 years. But basically what kept me dry was fear of dying, even though at the same time I wanted to die. So it's very contradictory and paradoxical.
Oh, yeah.
But
good word.
Even though I wanted to die, I was afraid of dying. And I was afraid of the effect it would have on me. And then honestly, like, I was getting more and more involved in church. And that last year of being dry, I was a pastor at my church. I was on the worship team. I was a youth intern, and I co-led the young adults ministry. So I was involved heavily in my belief system, and that helped keep me dry, but it didn't help keep me sober. And then when I started facing recovery from a traumatic event that I had, that's when I started drinking again and using again, really. Before that, I slowly started drinking because I thought I could drink like a gentleman, but it didn't really hit its peak until I started dealing with trauma right on the day that I graduated from college is when I went back to therapy, like the morning that I was supposed to graduate. So I don't know if that answers your question, did it?
Yeah, totally. I really loved how you differentiated between just being dry and actual sobriety. So yeah, that was a perfect answer. Back over to Eric with the weather.
So yeah, you were talking about how you had a surgery when you were younger, and that was kind of your introduction to pills. So I've had tons of surgeries, and my first introduction to drugs was through a doctor. So I guess do you believe that incident jump started your addiction, or do you believe without that particular incident things might have gone in a different direction?
I want to say yes, but I will say no. I think that with my case, not everyone, I think I was born with an addictive personality, and that it was bound to happen without having the right foundation that I now have in recovery. Because before I got introduced to pills, I was already doing things like spice and salvia on top of weed. Pills didn't. Yeah, sorry. I was doing whatever I could get my hands on. So I don't think with that, like, that was just my introduction to pills, not necessarily drugs.
Okay.
Okay.
But it was when I started snorting painkillers and snorting other medications and just experimenting more. Before, I only smoked things that I thought, because I was stupid. Okay, you got to remember this. I was stupid, and so I thought, like, oh, it's just a form of weed when I would smoke this stuff. And, like, it's not really a drug. And I was doing it, like, with my boss at the time and where I was working and coworkers, and so I thought it was all normal. Everyone did this, but they didn't do it to the extent that I did, and I didn't recognize that. So back to your question, I don't think so.
Okay.
I think I would have still come to the point that I was at just because of a lot of different factors were involved, like that traumatic event that I keep alluding to, my depression, and then just the experiences that I already had, plus my, I would say my biological disposition from heredity. So, yeah.
All right. Great answer. Oh, did you have a follow-up, Eric?
It was kind of like a sick question, about salvia. Like,
We're not. No sick questions.
I just want
tonight.
to,
No sick questions tonight. We're not doing that.
It's fine. It's fine.
So you said you're part of like the sober fellowship and not the clean fellowship? The one that deals with like
What do you mean?
more, well, the fellowship that deals more with alcohol than with narcotics?
Yes.
Okay, so what did you ever try the clean fellowship, and what made you choose one over the other?
I did not.
Okay.
And it was just because I never, when I first started, I never identified as an addict. I saw that I had drug abuse problems, but not necessarily addiction, which
Okay.
I disagree with now.
Okay.
But that was my thought when I came into the room.
Mm-hmm.
It was more, when I first came to recognize I had a problem, it was with alcohol.
Okay.
And so I just stuck with it from there. I fell in love with the fellowship, and I just stayed. And
Yeah.
I heard from people in the program that they're almost exactly the same program. It's just the solidarity of purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like, I'd rather identify as this for my recovery for with alcohol, because this is what I feel like I mainly struggled with.
Okay.
Because that was harder to give up for me than drugs were.
All right. Okay. Cool. Yeah, it's a great answer. All right. How would you, like, here at Podcast Recovery, we believe that like everybody has their own avenue of recovery, be it whatever 12-step fellowship, or sometimes it's faith, sometimes it's other fellowships. So what does recovery mean to you?
Oh my gosh, recovery gave me a new beginning. It means everything to me. It helped me develop my relationship with my higher power. It helped me fix other broken relationships. It helped me become sane. Recovery is everything for me.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful for the 12-step program. I'm so grateful for the day my friend pushed me to go back to a meeting and then grabbed me a sponsor.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful for my relapse even, because it showed me that I was missing something in my step work. It was keeping me from being happy, joyous, and free. So I am just beyond grateful, and I try to give back in any way I can. When I'm asked to speak, even though I hate speaking, I speak. I show up. I do the service commitment.
Yeah.
And so I give back when I can, because I'm so grateful for it.
Absolutely. All right. Perfect answer.
All right. So this is our last question.
The final question.
And
for $1 million.
so I guess, we see ourselves differently from the point in time when, we reach the end of the road of addiction into where we are in today in recovery. So I guess, can you describe kind of where you saw yourself at the end of your road and how you see yourself today, and how, those kind of the contrast of, where you were to where you are?
Definitely. Good question. And I've actually been reflecting upon that question this month with so many changes happening, getting my 1 year, celebrating my birthday, getting engaged. So when I first entered the rooms, I was so hopeless. I saw myself as a piece of garbage who wasn't worth anyone's time. I didn't think I could be happy. I didn't think I deserved love. I didn't think I was lovable even. I was just so distraught, and a lot of it too, like, I hate to say it like this because some people might take it wrong, but a lot of it comes from pride and the ego. Those thoughts, it's very self-centered. You're focused on yourself and like what could make me happy. I could never be happy, instead of like being altruistic and saying, how can I make other people happy, which in turn like gives us purpose. And so I would say that's where I was at when I first entered the rooms. Like, I didn't think I was worth a sponsor's time, even. So like I would call him, he wouldn't answer, and I'd be like, oh, okay, I guess he's busy. But I would just take it all personal. I was very sensitive. Everything was about me. Like, I must be bothering them, not they must be busy, but I must be bothering them. It was just very selfish. Now I'm happy. I'm rarely depressed. I'm able to balance having a full-time job, being a full-time student, and recovery, and working with my sponsee, and being happy and showing him that life is all about your perspective. And that's my biggest thing that I like to, for lack of better words, preach about is perspective, because that's everything. You can look at a situation from a negative perspective, and that's how your day is going to go. If you're worried about something, the situation's not going to change, and that's because of your perspective. And that's what I'm teaching him, because he's still young. He's younger than I am, and I'm pretty young in recovery. He's 15. So I'm like, you still have a lot of growing up in life in general, and then now getting sober has kept you from growing up even more. And so he's exactly where I was at 17. And so I see a lot of that hopelessness, but I see a lot of that potential in him to do great things. And I'm just like, I wish I had someone like me in his life. That sounds so arrogant, but I'm serious. I wish I had someone like me from him in my life when I was 17, because I had a great mentor, but he didn't understand what I was going through, and so it was hard for him to give me advice. But I'm so grateful for him. He just couldn't connect the way I can with my sponsor. And so I have this new view of life, and I have this new perspective of life than I did, and this new perspective of me than I did when I first got sober.
Fantastic. All right. Well, I'm out of questions, and I believe Eric is as well.
That's correct, sir.
So we'd like to thank you for joining us. We're going to give you a golf clap. You did a great job, man. We really appreciate you coming out and sharing your story with us. But now we're going to give you a quick hot minute to give a message to the listeners out there who are struggling in either addiction or in recovery, maybe in mental illness. What do you have to say for those people? What sort of message of hope do you want to give them?
Keep trying, even when it seems like there's no hope. Put in the effort. Your recovery is based on the work that you put in. Your happiness is based on your perspective. So keep trying and keep pushing. And from someone who didn't think this was true, it does get better, but you have to put in the work. God will provide you the means, and he has a calling and will for your life, but you need to put in the work because he's given you that ability to do so.
All right. Perfect. Well, again, we'd like to thank you for joining us, and we would like to thank our guest, John, for joining us today. Absolutely, man. It was a pleasure. Here at Podcast Recovery, we are aiming to expand the scope of support for recovering addicts. Accessibility and convenience of helpful services is paramount to combating addiction. We work to bring the message of hope to every addict wherever and whenever it is needed. We believe that a powerful voice of recovery should be obtainable, practical, and at the touch of a button. Every addict deserves to hear a message of hope, and Podcast Recovery is here to provide it. So, John, one more time, thank you. Keep following us. Listen to the rest of our episodes. Follow us on Twitter. Invite your friends. Tell all your friends about it. If you have anybody you'd like to hear their story, and send them our way, man.
Definitely.
Yeah. All right. Well, most importantly, everybody out there who's listening, thank you for listening, and stay safe, stay clean, and sober.